Chapter 181 Fairy. Are you confident in killing a fairy? Zhou Wen followed behind the group as they walked towards Lotus Flower Cave. No, Hui Haifeng answered. Although Zhang Yan and Zhang Zia didn't answer, their faces implied that they weren't confident either. Aren't you taking too much of a risk when you don't have the confidence in killing a fairy? Zhou Wen looked at the trio speechlessly. Hui Haifeng smiled and said, if it's something that can definitely be done, what's the fun in doing so? It's only interesting if you aren't confident. What theory is that? Zhou Wen was rendered even more speechless. He didn't agree that risking one's life for fun was something interesting. Zhang Zia pursed his lips and said, Hui Haifeng might not be entirely right, but there's nothing wrong with it. If it's something others can do, why should we do it? What about you? Zhou Wen looked at Zhang Yan. Counselor got me to watch you all. Since all of you are going, I can only follow, Zhang Yan said indifferently. Zhou Wen looked at the trio and was momentarily at a loss for words. He increasingly felt that none of Wang Mingyu's students were normal. He had originally found Hui Haifeng was rather normal, but from what he saw today, he was wrong. Apart from Zhou Wen, no one else was in any way normal. Why would a gentle person like teacher teach such a bunch of strange and eccentric fellows? Zhou Wen originally wanted to say that he wasn't going, but the trio had already gone far. Whatever. Zhou Wen sighed and shook his head before following. Zhou Wen wasn't completely lacking in confidence. He wasn't a fairy's match in the past, but he was much stronger now. Although he wasn't enough to fight an epic fairy, he still had some confidence in staying alive. When he grinded in Lotus Flower Cave, he would occasionally encounter a fairy. It wasn't difficult for him to escape. Soon, the four arrived at Lotus Flower Cave. Not long after they entered the cave, they met a fairy monkey. Before Zhang Yan and Zhang Zia could make a move, Hui Haifeng nudged Zhou Wen forward. You've been recuperating for so long, let's warm up your muscles first so that you won't have a cramp when you encounter a fairy. I'll be the last one cramping between the two of us, Zhou Wen cursed inwardly, but he had no choice but to approach the fairy monkey. He had lost count of the number of fairy monkeys he had killed in-game, but he knew every action of theirs. When he saw the fairy monkey flap its wings and fly down, its claws shimmering with a terrifying light, he unhurriedly took a huge step forward and leapt up, causing the fairy monkey to barely miss him. Bam! Zhou Wen struck the back of the fairy monkey's head with his palm. The fairy monkey didn't even have the chance to scream as it fell from the sky. It convulsed twice without any sound. Beautiful. Hui Haifeng couldn't help but praise. Zhang Yan was also slightly surprised, but Zhang Zia pursed his lips and said, passable. All that training in palm techniques didn't go to waste after all. You didn't embarrass teacher. They encountered several fairy monkeys in a row, but no one was willing to take action. Zhou Wen had no choice but to head up and hunt them, treating it as an opportunity to practice his 7-distribution palm. Zhang Zia led the way, passing through more than 10 caves when they suddenly saw a fairy-like creature rushing towards them with its clothes fluttering. Zhou Wen recognized it at a glance. It was a fairy and epic dimensional creature inside Lotus Flower Cave. But upon careful inspection, Zhou Wen's expression changed drastically. He had seen quite a number of fairies, but they were all dressed in colorful clothes with ribbons wrapped around their bodies. However, this fairy was different. She was dressed in black and the ribbons fluttering in her body were pure white in color. She was very different from the fairies that Zhou Wen had previously seen. Oh no, it's a mutated fairy. Zhang Zia was also surprised, but he had no intention of retreating. He took out a gun and aimed it at the fairy, shooting 3 consecutive shots. The bullets instantly appeared in front of the fairy, but she didn't move at all. The pure white ribbons danced around her body as though they had a life of their own, repelling the 3 bullets. The bullets made of primordial gold failed to deal any damage. Run. Seeing that the 3 bullets were useless, Zhang Zia immediately turned around and ran. His actions were swift and without any hesitation. Zhou Wen had just started when he saw Zhang Yan and Hui Haifeng running, each faster than the other. They had run virtually at the same moment with Zhang Zia, and Zhou Wen was the slowest. However, even Zhang Zia, who was running right ahead, was unable to rush out of the cave. Just as he was about to enter the neighboring cave, he saw the surroundings suddenly turn pitch black. He could no longer see anything. Zhang Zia leapt up in a bid to rush out of the cave in the darkness. However, with that jump, he slammed into what appeared like a steel plate. With a loud bang, Zhang Zia's face was flattened from the impact. He fell back as his nose bled. Zhou Wen didn't know if Hui Haifeng and Zhang Yan could see, but he could see everything clearly with Truth Listener's powers. As for the fairy in the air, a black sun suddenly appeared behind her. It emitted black light which enveloped the entire cave, forming a dark space. Is that the life soul of a fairy? Zhou Wen had also seen a few fairies, but he had never seen them use their life souls. It was unknown if the typical fairy's life soul was the same as a mutated fairy's. Zhou Wen was just about to warn Zhang Yan and Hui Haifeng to be careful when the ribbon on the mutated fairy flew over like a jade worm tearing through the air. It was targeting Zhou Wen. Just as he was about to fight, he saw Zhang Yan's figure flash and help him block. A slender sword had appeared in his hand in the process. The sword's width was at most 1 finger wide, even thinner than paper, so thin that it was almost transparent. The sword in Zhang Yan's hand drew out a purple beam and accurately hit the ribbon. It failed to slice through it but instead wrapped around the sword. With a tug of the fairy's milky white hand, the pure white ribbon tightened and the sword in Zhang Yan's hand snapped loudly into several pieces. Zhang Yan retreated in time, avoiding being sliced by the ribbon. Zhang Zia leapt up from the ground, a gun in each hand. He fired ceaselessly at the mutated fairy, but unfortunately, all the bullets were blocked by the spinning ribbons. The fairy wasn't injured at all. Why are we so unlucky? Zhou Wen knew that if he didn't kill this mutated fairy, they would probably die. Without any hesitation, he took the opportunity to summon the great yin fan while the fairy was blocking the bullets. He leapt into the air and charged at the mutated fairy. Meanwhile, Hui Haifeng and Zhang Yan seemed to act as though their minds were connected by telepathy. They charged at the mutated fairy, clearly having the same thoughts. Article 182 of 1597. With a strong swish of the banana fan at the mutated fairy, the grand yin wind swept out immediately. The mutated fairy's body fluttered like the wind, and the grand yin wind seemed to aid her. However, a thin layer of frost appeared over her body. It was just that the cold wasn't enough to freeze her. It merely affected her agility. Zhou Wen knew that this was because the banana fairy's level was too low. If the banana fairy was also at the epic stage, this single flap would probably have frozen the mutated fairy in midair. It would be useless even if she had the ability to ride the wind. However, as the mutated fairy was flying with the wind's momentum while suffering from diminished agility, it made her trajectory easier to predict. Zhang Yan held a semi-translucent whip that was neither gold nor jade. It looked like a weapon made out of a biological creature's tendons. Lashing it out at the mutated fairy, the translucent whip wrapped around its ankle as though it had predicted her trajectory. Zhang Yan pulled the whip with all his might, but the strength of the mutated fairy was so strong that it lifted him up. Zhang Yan didn't let go of the whip and continued to clasp onto it tightly. It was like a weight that greatly slowed down the mutated fairy's speed. The ribbons on the mutated fairy's body fluttered like a worm as they swept towards Zhang Yan. If he was caught by the ribbons, his body would probably be broken into several pieces. Hui Haifeng had already rushed in front of the mutated fairy. An arm wrapped in a metal bracer erupted like a volcano, emitting powerful streams of light as it blasted at the mutated fairy. Due to the freezing in Zhang Yan, the mutated fairy's movement was greatly affected. She could no longer dodge the punch, but she wasn't flustered. She waved her hand gently, blocking Hui Haifeng's punch. Bam! Hui Haifeng felt as if he had been struck by a hammer as his body flew backward. He slammed into the stone wall and spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing that the ribbon was about to sweep him up, Zhang Yan held the whip with both hands and shook his body, avoiding the entanglement of the ribbon several times. However, that was all he managed. It didn't stop the ribbons from eventually being on the cusp of wrapping around his body. There was a sword flash hit the ribbon, a result of Zhang Zia holding a sword at some point in time. It was unusually sharp and, although the sword beam shattered immediately upon contact with the ribbon and Zhang Zia was sent flying, the change in the ribbon's trajectory gave Zhang Yan a chance to dodge it. Zhang Yan continued to hold on to the whip, dodging the ribbon twice before the threat of having the ribbon wrap around him happened again. At this point, Zhou Wen noticed something. Zhang Yan's whip seemed to have some special use, which was why Zhang Yan refused to let go. Without any hesitation, he leapt up into the sky and once again flapped the banana fan at the mutated fairy. It blew the mutated fairy's body to the side and changed her ribbon's trajectory. However, this time, the mutated fairy seemed to be prepared. While she used the wind to escape, she tapped gently with her milky white finger, sending a beam in the direction of Zhou Wen's heart. Zhou Wen immediately felt his heart turn cold. The beam was too fast, one that he couldn't dodge with his speed. All he could do was summon the three-eyed golden warrior to put it in between him and the beam. Crack! The white beam penetrated the three-eyed golden warrior's golden body without stopping. Neither did its power dissipate as it continued forward, stabbing into Zhou Wen's flesh. Blood immediately spewed out from the wound on his shoulder. Thankfully, the three-eyed golden warrior was able to ward off most of its might. Furthermore, Zhou Wen had also used that opening to adjust his position without being hit in any vital spots. Hui Haifeng's mouth was covered in blood as he delivered another punch at the mutated fairy. Then, Zhou Wen saw that he had once again been sent flying upon contact with her palm. The diabolical longsword in Zhang Zia's hand flickered, but his eyes appeared even more diabolical than the sword's glint. It presented a strange blood-red color as it slashed out blood-colored sword beams in a frenzy, sweeping right at the mutated fairy like a tornado. The mutated fairy's ribbons spun as they shattered all the sword beams. Despite fighting against four, she still held an absolute advantage. However, Zhou Wen didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt that the mutated fairy's speed had slowed down. It wasn't as fast as before, especially her hands. They weren't as light and elegant as before, as though there was something heavy on them that prevented her from moving them as she wanted. It's a result of Hui Haifeng's punches. Zhou Wen saw a strange mark appear on the mutated fairy's palm. He immediately thought of the two punches Hui Haifeng had delivered. Without time to think deeper, Zhou Wen stirred up the grand yin wind once again. This time, it wasn't directed at the mutated fairy, but rather, it was aimed at her ribbon. He was forcibly changing the trajectory of the ribbon that was targeting Zhang Yan. Even so, Zhang Yan's face was still sliced by a ribbon. His cheekbones tore open and a trickle of blood immediately flowed out. Following that, another beam of light shot towards Zhang Yan's head. He had no room to dodge unless he was willing to release the whip in his hand. Hold her back. Zhang Yan grabbed the whip and screamed. How? I can't even if I were to throw my life at her. Zhang Zia held his sword with both hands as he unleashed several sword beams at the light beams that the mutated fairy produced. When the diabolical blood-colored sword beams came into contact with the beams, they immediately burst like blood-colored fireworks. Zhang Zia was also sent flying by the force of the blow. His hands holding the sword were covered in blood, but the beam still shot towards Zhang Yan. Just as the beam was about to shoot through Zhang Yan's head, an invisible force suddenly pulled his body to the side, allowing him to barely dodge the attack. Zhou Wen had yanked Zhang Yan with his astral suction palm, saving his life in a timely fashion. Despite the four of them engaging the mutated fairy in combat, he was covered in injuries. This was the first time Zhou Wen had risked his life so crazily. In the past, he had only been gaming. Although he shared the same feelings in-game, it was a game after all. Zhou Wen knew that he couldn't die, therefore the feeling now was completely different. Under the true threat of death, Zhou Wen felt his entire being in a state of nervousness and oppression. In such a state, a normal person's body would become uneasy and cause their actions to change. Perhaps one wouldn't even be able to perform at 70 to 80% of their original strength. However, the more pressure Zhou Wen felt, the faster his body and mind were. The ribbons sliced past his muscles, producing a sound of lacerating flesh and bones that left him trembling. The horror pressured him, but it made his body even more excited. As he licked the blood from his mouth, he saw the fairy's hands hang down. Having just exerted her strength, she could only rely on the ribbons to protect her. Zhou Wen flew in the air like a bat, narrowly passing through the gaps between the ribbons. He swept over the fairy and simultaneously struck the top of her head. This palm was formless and silent, but when it struck the top of the fairy's head, it caused her to scream in pain. Subconsciously, it shot 10 beams at Zhou Wen with her fingers. Zhou Wen switched his primordial energy art to God Fiendera, and using the Life Providence's ability to levitate, he pushed the Dragon Gate fairy skill to its limits. Twisting his body, he dodged the terrifying beams. Article 183 of 1597. It wasn't solely because of Zhou Wen's speed and agility that he managed to dodge the beams. It had to do with the mutated fairy's fingers drastically slowing down. The mark that Hui Heifeng's strike left on her hand continued to do its magic, slowing down her hands with time. Furthermore, Zhou Wen didn't know if he was mistaken, but he felt that the mutated fairy's strength had weakened significantly. The intensity of the beam had clearly decreased. By the time the mutated fairy attacked Zhou Wen, she was in a panic. Hui Heifeng took the opportunity to leap up and strike her back, bombarding her with his two fists. This produced about 4 marks on her back. The mutated fairy turned around in an attempt to kill him, but her body suddenly stopped in midair. Zhang Yan had already landed on the ground at some point in time. He held onto the long whip with both hands and forcefully pulled back the mutated fairy's body, preventing her from continuing her flight. Zhou Wen saw Zhang Yan's body sparkling with purple light like a demonic spirit. The whip was also glowing with purple light, as though it was a blood-sucking demon that was constantly trembling and swallowing. Die. Zhang Zia repeatedly slashed with his sword, both hands gripped tightly on it. Streaks of blood-red sword beams slashed at the mutated fairy that Zhang Yan had put to a halt. They actually split apart her robe, leaving behind streaks of blood. Although the sword marks weren't deep, it was the first time Zhou Wen and company had truly injured the mutated fairy. The mutated fairy was clearly a spent force. Her movements became slower and slower, as though she had a mountain suppressing her. Furthermore, her strength was weakening, and Zhang Yan was becoming stronger. Bam! Like a demon god, Zhang Yan pulled the whip in his hand, forcefully throwing the mutated fairy's figure out and slamming her into the stone wall. This left a huge hole in the wall as the mutated fairy's mouth was covered in blood. Zhang Zia slashed down with his sword as well. The blood-red sword beam slashed at the head of the mutated fairy, and the sword plunged into the skull. A fierce glint flashed in the mutated fairy's eyes as she abruptly stood up and hugged Zhang Zia. A terrifying power erupted from her body. No good. She's going to self-destruct, Hui Heifeng shouted loudly. Zhang Zia struggled with all his might, but he was unable to break free. Despite Zhang Yan yanking his long whip, he could only pull the mutated fairy and Zhang Zia over. He couldn't separate them. Zhou Wen wasn't far from Zhang Zia as he was right behind him. A thought suddenly came to his mind as he charged at Zhang Zia and struck him on the back. Zhou Wen used all his strength to slam his ashen palm at Zhang Zia's back. Bam! Zhang Zia's body was fine, but the mutated fairy in front of him seemed to suffer a heavy blow to her chest. Blood spurted out of her mouth as her embracing of Zhang Zia weakened significantly. Zhang Zia struggled with all his might, got out of her embrace, and kicked her hard. Bam! As she flew in the air, the mutated fairy's body exploded. A terrifying black aura sent Zhou Wen, Zhang Zia, Hui Heifeng, and Zhang Yan flying. Instantly, the entire cave trembled and the ground quaked. Dust rose up as gravel flew. Are all of you all right? Hui Heifeng crawled out of the rubble, his body covered in blood and dust. He wore an ashen look as though he had just crawled out of a tomb. I'm fine. Zhang Yan also stood up from his spot elsewhere. Apart from his body being a little dirty, he was fine. I'm not. Zhongzia was slumped at the feet of a stone statue. His back was covered in bloody flesh, and his injuries were indeed serious. Zhou Wen's injuries weren't light either, he was about as injured as Wei Haifeng. Not being dead is good, Zhang Yan said with a smile after checking Zhongzia's injuries. Clearly, Zhongzia's life was not in danger, but his injuries were more serious. Is that how a person speaks? Zhongzia said weakly, don't talk so much. Hurry up and look around and see if anything dropped from the mutated fairy. If nothing dropped, our injuries will have been for nothing. Zhang Yan's condition was the best. He rummaged through the rubble and soon they heard him say happily, there's something. It's a primordial energy skill crystal. I wonder if it's the flying immortal skill. As long as there's something. It doesn't matter what it is, Zhongzia said. Zhang Yan threw a crystal at Zhou Wen. I don't know if it's the flying immortal skill. Go back and give it a try. However, be careful. Taking in an epic primordial energy skill at the legendary stage is extremely dangerous. If you aren't confident, it's best you consult counselor. Give me your accounts. I'll transfer your shares to you later, Zhou Wen said without standing on ceremony as he grabbed the primordial energy skill crystal. There's no need for money. You will be part of my team when I wish to kill some dimensional creature in the future, Wei Haifeng said. Can we talk about money later? Can you take me back to teacher to treat my injuries first? Zhongzia groaned. Zhang Yan carried Zhongzia on his back while Zhou Wen and Wei Haifeng helped each other out of Lotus Flower Cave. Soon, they returned to the laboratory in Old Dragon Cave. When Wang Mingyuan saw the four of them, Zhou Wen and company were like old, weak soldiers who had just been defeated. They were all covered in dirt and blood. However, Wang Mingyuan didn't ask about their escapades. He only summoned his soul and used the power of his life soul to treat their wounds. This was the first time Zhou Wen had seen Wang Mingyuan's life soul. He had been unconscious back when Wang Mingyuan treated his wounds. Wang Mingyuan's life soul was a bottle with a thin neck. Although it wasn't gorgeous, it had some beauty. A stream of light flowed out of the bottle like water, and when it touched a wound, Zhou Wen immediately felt a refreshing feeling as the pain of the wound was alleviated. As the aqueous light flowed into the wounds healed at a discernible pace. Even his bones recovered rapidly. After treating the quartet's injuries, Wang Mingyuan smiled and said to them, it's rare that the four of you are injured together. Let's have a feast to celebrate tonight. Zhou Wen recovered very quickly. Even without Wang Mingyuan's treatment, as long as he switched to the small perfection of Wisdom Sutra, his recuperation ability would be much better than the average person's. Hence, while Zhongzia and Wei Haifeng were still lying in the bed, Zhou Wen and Zhang Yan joined Wang Mingyuan for a celebratory feast. While resting in the evening, Zhou Wen took out the mutated fairy's crystal. It was about the size of a chicken egg. It was crystalline and inside it was a mutated fairy's shadow. Using the phone's camera function to check the crystal's attributes, Zhou Wen couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Mutated fairy crystal epic stage. Merging requires a speed of more than 21 points and a Buddha elemental primordial energy art. This was the first time Zhou Wen had seen a primordial energy skill that had a stat requirement other than primordial energy points. Furthermore, there were requirements on the primordial energy art. This was something he had never learned in school. Article 184 of 1597. Chapter 184 Dr. Darkness. Zhou Wen's current speed was only 18, quite a distance from 21 points, so the final 3 points were extremely difficult for him to raise. Apart from grinding monsters to have high-valued crystals drop, Zhou Wen didn't have any other good methods. I can only give it a try and see if I can use the mysterious phone to obtain the skill crystals in-game. Perhaps I can refine them and absorb them there. Zhou Wen hid under his blanket and used the mysterious phone's camera function to try snapping a picture of the mutated fairy crystal. A system notification popped up on the phone, yet to reach the stat requirements for the skill crystal, thus it cannot be refined and absorbed. Do you want to continue? Zhou Wen hurriedly chose no. Since he couldn't refine and absorb it, nor was there any way to store items in an inventory in-game, the crystal might end up being erased if the blood-colored avatar died after he brought it in-game. He might as well leave it in the real world. I can't refine and absorb it in-game if I can't meet the stat requirements. Zhou Wen felt a little depressed. It was nearly impossible for a 21 valued speed crystal to drop from a legendary creature. Unless Zhou Wen killed an epic creature, it was very difficult to get his hands on one. The experience of killing the fairy today made Zhou Wen fully realize how terrifying an epic creature was. If any of the four of them had made a mistake today, they might have perished there and then. And the combat power of fairy was considered lowly among the epic creatures. With Zhou Wen's strength alone, it would probably be difficult for him to succeed even with the help of a companion beast. As for the Buddha elemental primordial energy art requirement, it wasn't difficult for Zhou Wen. All he needed to do was switch his primordial energy art to the small perfection of Wisdom Sutra, and he was likely to satisfy the condition. He took a look at his blood-colored avatar's unchanged stats again. Only Ashen Palm had changed from the mortal stage to the legendary stage. Furthermore, it was still at rank 10. Zhou Wen didn't find it strange that his Ashen Palm had advanced from the mortal stage to the legendary stage. He had already sensed it during the battle, otherwise he wouldn't have been able to deliver the palm strike that saved Zhongzia. However, he never expected Ashen Palm to remain at rank 10 after advancing to the legendary stage. After some thought, Zhou Wen realized how difficult it was to obtain a speed crystal of 21 points from a legendary creature. He might as well kill an epic creature. However, with Zhou Wen's strength alone, it was impossible for him to kill an epic creature in-game. Today's battle with Zhang Yan and company made Zhou Wen understand one thing. He was alone in-game, and that limited him. However, in the real world, there were many powerful humans like Zhang Yan, Cang Zia, and Hui Haifeng. As long as they had good teamwork, they could do things that he couldn't do in-game. Zhou Wen planned on killing an epic creature in reality, but before that, he needed to find some powerful helpers. People like Li Xuan, Wang Lu, and Feng Qian were extremely powerful legendaries. If he could obtain their help, they had a chance of killing low-level epic creatures. High-level epic creatures were definitely impossible. Of course, Zhou Wen wouldn't risk his life, nor would he risk Li Xuan and company's lives. Therefore, he began crazily challenging the instance dungeons. The grinding this time was different from before. This time, Zhou Wen had especially sought out dungeons found in the college. Furthermore, he targeted dungeons with epic creatures. The most common destination was Dragon Gate Grotto. In some of the caves, there were epic creatures that existed. Zhou Wen tried hunting them one by one. This resulted in him naturally dying time and time again. When he encountered some powerful epic creatures, the blood-colored avatar would be instantly killed. If he encountered a weaker epic creature, he was able to last a little longer, but that was all. There was no way he could kill those epic creatures. The most powerful thing about an epic creature was that they possessed a life soul that had all sorts of powers. Those powers didn't have the limitations on primordial energy, so they could be constantly activated. A stronger life soul could instantly kill the blood-colored avatar and a group of his pets. Weaker life souls all had their own unique characteristics and possessed all sorts of magical powers. Zhou Wen repeatedly tested in order to find an epic creature that could possibly be killed by him. Then, he came up with a perfect plan, hoping to find a few capable helpers to kill an epic creature without taking any risk. Time passed as the blood-colored avatar constantly died. As he repeatedly probed things way beyond his level, he ended dying instantly most of the time. Having dripped too much blood, Zhou Wen felt that he was beginning to suffer from anemia again. Yan Zhen's disappearance didn't seem to cause too much of a stir. Although the police came to the school to investigate, it was only part of their routine procedures. No one suspected that Yan Zhen had died on campus. This made Zhou Wen heave a long sigh of relief. However, on second thought, he understood why no one suspected that Yan Zhen had died on campus. This was because no one knew that he had come to school. Yan Zhen had come to Zhou Wen and wanted to dissect him. This was something clandestine to begin with, so he had definitely made preparations beforehand. He wouldn't let anyone know that he had come to the school, nor would anyone know that he was here to find Zhou Wen. Upon thinking of Yan Zhen, Zhou Wen glanced at the fruit on the dead man tree. The fruit was already the size of a papaya, and its exterior was white and shiny. It looked like an egg no matter how he looked at it. On the 7th day of the fruit's growth, it automatically fell off the tree. Zhou Wen got the blood-colored avatar to pick it up. Indeed, it was a companion egg. Dr. Darkness, Epic. Life Providence, Golden Left Hand. Life Soul, Dr. Soul. Strength, 21. Speed, 37. Constitution, 26. Primordial Energy, 38. Talent Skill, Scalpel, Fight Poison with Poison, Light of Penetration. Companion Form, None. Upon seeing the information on the companion egg, Zhou Wen couldn't help but feel odd. The Dr. Darkness was clearly a replica of Yan Zhen. Could it be that the power of the dead man tree is to make a dead person a companion beast? Then, does Dr. Darkness have Yan Zhen's memory? Zhou Wen was momentarily hesitant, unsure of how to handle the companion egg. Hatching an epic companion egg required too much primordial energy. According to Zhou Wen's previous experience, he was likely able to incubate an epic companion egg using a bug in the game. However, there was a high chance that the Dr. Darkness would suffer a drop in level or be incomplete. However, if he didn't hatch it, Zhou Wen was afraid that it would disappear on his next refresh of the game. Also, if the Dr. Darkness had Yan Zhen's memories, would he rebel? This was something no one could guarantee. After some thought, Zhou Wen chose to incubate Dr. Darkness. He gritted his teeth and infused his primordial energy into the companion egg. At the moment the companion egg was activated, Zhou Wen felt his primordial energy surge like a flood that flowed out of a dam. In a blink of an eye, all his primordial energy was drained. The blood-colored avatar exploded to its death in-game. Due to the lack of primordial energy, the companion egg drained the blood-colored avatar's vitality. Article 185 of 1597. Chapter 185 Rejection. The blood-colored avatar exploded to death as the game screen turned black. Zhou Wen dripped another drop of blood and was reborn. When he entered the game again, he saw Dr. Darkness appear in his companion beast window. He realized that Dr. Darkness had already fallen to the legendary stage when he took a look at his stats. Dr. Darkness, Legendary, Youngling. Life Providence, Golden Left Hand. Speed, 18. Strength, 12. Constitution, 13. Primordial Energy, 18. Talent, skill, scalpel, fight poison with. Companion form, none. He was considered quite a good companion beast at the legendary stage, but that was all. After he evolved into a mature form, he might be able to return to the epic stage. However, it required a large amount of time to feed him. Zhou glanced at Dr. Darkness's image in-game and thought he looked very similar to Yan Zhen, but he realized that Dr. Darkness wasn't Yan Zhen. Dr. Darkness was wearing a white doctor's robe, but he wasn't a person but a human-shaped puppet. He wasn't of real flesh and blood. Zhou heaved a sigh of relief. He really couldn't accept it if Dr. Darkness really had looked like Yan Zhen. After testing the Dr. Darkness's skills in-game, he realized that he was actually a support-type pet. He was rather formidable when it came to tasks related to surgery, but his true combat power was not even comparable to the three-eyed golden warrior of the same level. However, if he was used for surgery, Dr. Darkness was definitely a top-notch companion beast. If a doctor had him as a companion beast, it was very likely that he could become a famous doctor. The scalpel technique allowed precise incisions with an error as small as 3 decimal places. Fight poison with poison was to use poison to stimulate one's body, allowing one's vitality to erupt to tide through the most dangerous point in surgery. It could even suppress some viruses. Light of penetration could be used to see through a patient's body, far better than X-ray or MRI. However, Zhou didn't know medicine. It was a waste giving him such an impressive medical companion beast. He didn't know how to use it at all. Don't tell me I need to study medicine now. Zhou was somewhat depressed, but on second thought, it wasn't completely useless. If he had to deal with some external injuries on the battlefield urgently, Dr. Darkness was still useful. When he returned to the epic stage in the future, his Dr. Life Soul would be of great help to him in battles. If I can make the Dr. Darkness return to the epic stage, it would be much easier for me to kill an epic creature. However, I wonder how long it will take before I can do this. Zhou kept a happy-go-lucky attitude as he went to Ant City to obtain a few companion eggs to feed Dr. Darkness. Days passed and Ouyang got Ah Sheng to pick him up once again. She said that she had something important to discuss with Zhou. Little Wen, have you thought it through? Do you want to participate in the competition for the special physiques? Ouyang paused before saying, the competition is about to begin. If you want to participate, you can head to the League's Holy Land over the next 2 days. Sis Lan, I don't wish to go. Can you give the spot to someone else? Zhou didn't wish to vie for a special physique. With the Lost Immortal Sutra, even if he didn't have a special physique, he could still master the primordial energy art of various styles. There's only one chance to change every nomination. I had already used up this opportunity when I changed the nomination to you. There's no way to change it now. If you don't go, this nomination would be considered null and void. Little Jing wouldn't be able to go either, Ouyang explained as though she had seen through Zhou thoughts. Sis Lan, I'm really not interested in that nomination. You should think of some other solution if it's possible. Zhou felt that going to the Holy Land to vie for those special physiques was a waste of time for him. Ouyang sighed and said, since you don't wish to go, I won't force you either. Let's forget about this matter. It's fine if the nomination is voided. Since it's useless to us, we'll just leave it voided. Although Zhou felt somewhat embarrassed, the nomination wasn't what he wanted in the first place. It wasn't his fault for having it voided because of his rejection. Ouyang didn't mention the matter again. She ordered a few dishes and the two chatted about family matters and school. After the meal, she got Ah Sheng to take Zhou back. Ah Sheng wasn't a conversationalist. He didn't say anything the entire journey until he got Zhou to the entrance of the school. Just as Zhou was about to alight, Ah Sheng suddenly said, why didn't you accept that nomination? Having that nomination isn't a bad thing for you. Many members of the League's large families yearn for this spot. I just want to live peacefully. I have no interest in special physiques, Zhou said. Ah Sheng shook his head and said, young Master Wen, perhaps you still don't know that the League isn't as peaceful as it seems. In fact, many of the other dimensional zones in the League have had cases of breakouts. Powerful dimensional creatures have rushed out of the dimensional zones and entered the human cities, creating terrifying massacres. Many people have died. After a pause, Ah Sheng continued, perhaps in a few years, all the dimensional zones will vanish. When that happens, large numbers of dimensional creatures would rush into the human cities. If one doesn't have the necessary strength, they might not even be family. Is the situation very bad? Zhou knew that Ah Sheng wasn't lying. In his dorm, there was a dimensional creature that had broken out and refused to leave. It ate like a lord every day. It's worse than most people can imagine. Not long ago, a military base at Chess Mountain was wiped out, including an epic stage commander. Now, Chess Mountain is only temporarily suppressed, and the creatures inside can rush out at any time. When that happens, the dimensional creatures that come out might be even more powerful. Once the military is unable to stop those breakout creatures, the human world will immediately plunge into a disaster. Ah Sheng looked into Zhou eyes through the rearview mirror and said, it's not for anyone. It's only for your survival in this chaotic world. You should also make a trip to the Holy Land. The things that can be given to you there might allow you to survive in a world of chaos that isn't too far away. Thank you for telling me this. However, I really do not wish to have anything to do with the Yin family or take anything from them, Zhou spoke the heartfelt truth. Affinity that made Zhou believe that he could say what he couldn't tell others. Ah Sheng fell silent. After a long while, he sighed and said, Madam is right. Although your surname isn't N and you don't have any blood relations with Overseer N, your temperaments are too similar. Article 186 of 1597. When Zhou Wen returned to his dorm, his heart felt heavy. The reality was worse than he imagined. Even an epic military officer had died in battle outside a dimensional zone with large numbers of breakout creatures rushing into the cities. Zhou Wen couldn't imagine how many humans would survive when that happened. Although he knew that danger wasn't far away, there was little he could do now. The only thing he could do was to raise his strength as much as possible. If that day really came, perhaps he could use his own strength to save the people he wanted to save. He glanced at the antelope sleeping on the couch. This fellow did nothing but eat and sleep all day. Ever since it left Mount Laojun, it hadn't done anything else. If only the dimensional creatures in the dimensional zones are the same as you. It would be great if they could just be dealt with by giving them something to eat. Zhou Wen was just musing, knowing that it was impossible. Even if dimensional creatures didn't cause trouble for humans, the greedy nature of humans would still plunder their treasures. Sometimes, as a human, Zhou Wen felt that humans didn't deserve pity. Zhou Wen controlled the blood-colored avatar and constantly launched suicidal attacks against various epic creatures, hoping to find a pushover among them. His efforts were not in vain. Through the experience gained through death, Zhou Wen saw a sliver of hope. It was an epic creature in Dragon Gate Grotto. However, it wasn't a fairy but a tiger in the Bainyang cave. It looked ordinary, so every time Zhou Wen saw it, he wrote it off as an ordinary tiger. It was at best a mortal stage creature. However, when the tiger really began moving, Zhou Wen realized how ridiculously wrong he was. He didn't put up much of a fight before he was swallowed by the tiger. Although he had suffered a terrible defeat the first time, Zhou Wen had no choice but to make attempts on the few weaker epic creatures. Since he had suffered an even worse defeat by other epic creatures, this was a safer option for now. He gradually discovered some of the tiger's habitual weaknesses, and after fighting the tiger several times, he was able to last longer. After countless deaths and repeated experiments, Zhou Wen was certain that it wouldn't be difficult to kill the tiger if he had 2 or 3 powerful helpers. He already had a detailed plan. As long as he followed the plan, it wouldn't be difficult to kill the tiger. The problem now was where to find a few powerful helpers. Zhou Wen's 3 senior brothers were very strong, but they had already helped him once and they hadn't received any benefits from him. He had yet to return the favor he owed, so it wasn't appropriate for him to seek their help again. After some thought, Zhou Wen made a phone call to Li Xuan and told him that he wanted his help in killing an epic creature. Fuck old Zhou, nice one. You are often silent, but once you make a sound, it's shocking. You've actually decided to directly aim your sights at an epic creature? Whatever, count me in. Li Xuan agreed without any hesitation. This trust was not something average people had. Zhou Wen didn't say anything else as he got Li Xuan to meet him the next day. There was no point in saying certain things. It was better to let actions speak for themselves to not disappoint him. After some thought, Zhou Wen made another phone call to Feng Qian. Feng Qian's saber techniques were sufficiently powerful, comparable to Zhang Zia's sword techniques. He was also a powerful aide. After explaining his thoughts on killing an epic creature and telling Feng Qian that he only wanted the speed crystals and wouldn't claim anything no matter what dropped, Feng Qian didn't hesitate either. Those other items could be split among themselves. He directly said, to be able to fight with Coach is a very good learning opportunity. I don't need to split the spoils. Just let me participate in the battle. Zhou Wen felt like crying when he heard that. What a good classmate and such a kind child. If there were more people like Feng Qian in this world, would there still be things like war? According to Zhou Wen's plan, it should be enough to kill the epic stage tiger with Li Xuan and Feng Qian's help. However, taking in the old adages, expect the unexpected and man proposes God disposes, Zhou Wen decided to buy some insurance for his first attempt at killing an epic creature. Hence, Zhou Wen made another call to Huang Ji and repeated what Feng Qian had said to him. He also told Huang Ji that, other than the speed crystal, anything that dropped would be his. Zhou Wen knew that Huang Ji was also in need of money. As long as Huang Ji believed him, he definitely wouldn't reject the opportunity to earn money. After all, anything dropped by an epic creature could sell at a decent price. If you had said so earlier, I would definitely have joined you. However, I'm already at the airport and am about to board the plane. I definitely won't be able to join you, Huang Ji said. Board the plane. Where are you going? Zhou Wen asked in puzzlement. I have some matters to attend to at the League's Holy Land. I'm afraid I won't be able to return anytime soon. If you're not in a hurry, wait about 10 days for me, said Huang Ji. Let's talk when you come back. Zhou Wen hung up the phone and thought for a moment before calling Wang Lu to ask if she was interested in hunting an epic creature. Of course I'm interested. How can such an interesting thing happen without me? Wang Lu said with a smile. It looked like she had recovered pretty well. Zhou Wen thought to himself, if Wang Lu were to turn into a companion egg by the dead man tree, I wonder what kind of form it would be. After gathering a number of people, Zhou Wen called them over the next morning to give them a detailed explanation of his plans and things to take note of. Old Zhou, what kind of epic creature do you want to kill? Fairies in Lotus Flower Cave or the golden creatures deep in the myriad Buddha Cave? Li Xuan asked with a grin. Those epic creatures are too powerful and too dangerous. I want to kill this epic creature, an epic tiger in Bainyang Cave, Zhou Wen said. Li Xuan's expression turned odd when he heard that. The tiger you mentioned can't be the one with white fur, black stripes and a strange cross pattern on its forehead, right? That's right. Zhou Wen looked at Li Xuan in puzzlement. From Li Xuan's tone, there seemed to be a problem. Li Xuan said with a bitter smile, that tiger is indeed one of the weakest epics, but the items it drops aren't bad. They are even very rare and useful. Therefore, the tigers in the Bainyang Cave are protected animals. You have to obtain permission to kill it. What rare items can such a weak tiger drop? Zhou Wen found it unbelievable. Li Xuan rolled his eyes at him and said, have you heard of the story of Buddha cutting his flesh to feed a tiger? It's said that the tiger in the Bainyang Cave is the descendant of that tiger. They aren't strong, but their life providences are one of a kind. They are of immense use and everyone wants them. Article 187 of 1597. What life providence does that tiger have? Zhou Wen asked. Its life providence is called the baby tiger of luck. Think about it. A baby tiger that was just about to be eaten by his mother actually encountered Buddha and had Buddha sacrifice his body to feed his mother. Don't you think it's lucky? Li Xuan said. Indeed, it's lucky, very lucky. Wang Lu nodded. Therefore, that baby tiger's life providence is one that comes with an extremely rare luck attribute. If one can obtain a baby tiger companion beast and use it to kill dimensional creatures, one will not only have the chances of dimensional crystals and companion eggs drop, but also be boosted by several percentage points. The dimensional crystal's value and the companion eggs attributes will be better than usual. Do you think this item is worth anything? Li Xuan said. It will be worth a lot. It's so valuable. Even an excellent grade epic companion beast might not be worth as much as it, said Wang Lu firmly. Therefore, there are too many people who want the baby tiger. Let's not talk about us, even those bigwigs will want this baby tiger with them. It's also because of this that the tiger in Bainyang Cave has become an endangered dimensional creature. There have been a few clashes in Bainyang Cave in the past. Eventually, the military was deployed to resolve the matter. Later on, they took over the area. You can enter to kill the tiger, but you have to obtain permission from the military. My family has some say in Luong, but it's impossible to get in through the back door. Old Zhou, I think you need to change your plan, Li Xuan said. Zhou Wen never expected the tiger he had chosen would be so famous. He couldn't help but frown as he asked, then what should we do to obtain the right to kill the tiger? Although Zhou Wen was very interested in a tiger with a lucky life providence, it wasn't his main goal. All he needed to do was obtain the speed crystal. If he had to formulate a new plan, firstly, it wasn't easy finding weak epic creatures and secondly, Zhou Wen and company might not be able to beat them. All the bigwigs in Luong City grit their teeth in anger when this topic is raised. In the beginning, everyone wanted to get connections to obtain the right to kill the tiger, but think about it. There are so many bigwigs in Luong City, so it's not good for the military to permit and reject people. It might be because they were forced to do so, but I don't know who came up with the idea. They set up a huge wheel of fortune. They claimed that whether you can get the lucky baby tiger will be decided by luck. Spinning the wheel each time costs 10,000. If you hit it, you are permitted to enter for 24 hours, Li Xuan said knowingly. 10,000 a spin isn't considered expensive. Those bigwigs have plenty of money. Just spend some money. What's there to be angry about? Wang Lu asked in puzzlement. If only it were that simple. The wheel of fortune the military setup is electronically controlled. Just pressing a button will automatically spin it. Furthermore, with the military's dedicated personnel watching over it, there's no way to interfere with it. The chances of success are what you call low. There was once a bigwig who led his men to spin the wheel of fortune. After a few hundred turns, they failed to hit it at all. In the beginning, the military earned quite a bit of money. It was practically a scam, but there was nothing that could be done about it. Blame it on the bigwigs wanting the baby tiger. It ranges from 1 to 200 spins or a few hundred spins to hit it. But even if you hit it, the tiger might not drop a companion egg, right? Li Xuan droned on. Isn't this a scam? Zhou Wen frowned. He had completely given up on killing the tiger. With so much money, why was he going through all the trouble? He could just buy speed crystals. It is a scam, but what can you do if you want the baby tiger? However, there are plenty of rich people in bigwigs who don't care about money to spin that thing. I also wanted to try it in the past, but thinking about how I can't spin too many times with my allowance, I gave up on this plan, Li Xuan said as he spread out his hands. In that case, it looks like I can only give up on this plan. I'll do more research when I get back. I'll find another epic creature as a target, Zhou Wen said. There's no need to give up. Follow me. I have a way to enter the Bainyang Cave, said Wang Lu with certainty. What solutions do you have? Li Xuan asked Wang Lu in disbelief. Although Wang Lu had a powerful background, she wasn't a Luong native. Li Xuan refused to believe that she had more say than the Li family that could only enter through the back door. Just follow me. You will know when the time comes. Wang Lu looked confident. Zhou Wen, Li Xuan, and Feng Qian had no choice but to follow Wang Lu to the Bainyang cave. Zhou Wen didn't explain his plan and planned on seeing if Wang Lu could obtain permission to enter the Bainyang cave to kill the tiger. If she couldn't obtain it, there was no point in explaining it. Soon, the four of them arrived outside the Bainyang cave. It was not completely sealed off. Only the cave where the baby tiger appeared had the military managing it. Not long after Li Xuan had brought Zhou Wen and company into the Bainyang cave, they saw a soldier guarding a cave entrance. Beside the cave's entrance was a wheel of fortune. The white wheel of fortune was very eye-catching, but there was a thin red line that looked like a strand of hair. The needle had to hit the red line precisely before the system could automatically determine a jackpot. Ignoring the fact that it was an electronic wheel of fortune, even if it was manually spun, it would not be easy to hit it. There was only a red button on the entire wheel. It had pressure sensors that allowed for longer and faster spinning by pressing the button forcefully and a slower and short spin with a gentle press. The only thing that could be controlled was this button. Zhou Wen wanted to use truth listeners hearing to hear the internal structure of the wheel, but he couldn't hear anything. He didn't know what device was installed in it. How long would it take to kill that tiger? Wang Lu asked Zhou Wen. If it's only to kill, it should be fast. If nothing goes wrong, it's at most half an hour. Zhou Wen thought for a moment. He could have the tiger repeatedly appear in-game, but he didn't know how long it would take for these tigers to burrow through a spatial rift. Li Xuan said, I heard that a tiger will appear every 2 to 3 days. Furthermore, there is usually only one tiger in the cave at a time. There won't be multiple tigers appearing together. We have no idea if a tiger has been killed. All right, I got it. As Wang Lu spoke, she walked towards the wheel of fortune and said to the guard, I'm going to spin 3 times. How do I pay? Card, QR code, or bank transfer? The soldier smiled. Wang Lu, don't tell me your method is to throw money at it. Then why don't you just give the money to Zhou Wen so that he can buy a speed crystal? Li Xuan said with widened eyes. Article 188 of 1597. Chapter 188 The Spinning Wheel. Just watch. As Wang Lu said that, she scanned the QR code to make payment and walked to the wheel of fortune. After being checked by the military, she pressed a red button. The wheel started spinning, stopping only after a while. Tick. 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 When the wheel stopped moving, Zhou Wen, Li Xuan, and Feng Kaiyan's eyes widened as they looked incredulously at the wheel of fortune. He saw that the needle had stopped at the red line that was as thin as a hair strand. The light on the wheel of fortune lit up, accompanied by a jackpot sound. Damn, what kind of dog shit luck did you get? You actually hit it in one shot. Li Xuan's eyes widened. An officer walked over but did not congratulate Wang Lu for winning the prize. Instead, he carefully checked the wheel of fortune and tried spinning it a few more times. After confirming that everything was normal, he said to Wang Lu, Miss, you are really lucky. Congratulations on obtaining 24 hours. You may enter now. Hold on, I still have 2 more chances, Wang Lu said as she pressed her palm on the red button again, making the wheel spin again. When the wheel stopped, Li Xuan, Zhou Xuan, and Feng Qian widened their mouths as they looked at Wang Lu and the wheel as though they were watching an alien. All that could be seen was flashing lights and music fanfare playing. Wang Lu had hit the jackpot again. The officer's expression changed and he quickly checked the machine again. In the end, everything was still normal. He tried many times but failed to get it. Clearly, there was no problem with the wheel of fortune. Miss, congratulations on obtaining another 24 hours. There's still one more chance. Are you still spinning? The officer stared at Wang Lu and asked. Clearly, he suspected that there was something wrong with Wang Lu. Why not? I did spend the money, Wang Lu said as she pressed her palm onto the red button. This time, the officer stared intently at Wang Lu the entire time. He wanted to know if she had used any powers to interfere with the wheel of fortune. He was in charge of this area and had special abilities. If powers affected the wheel, it would be impossible for him not to notice. However, despite staring at Wang Lu from beginning to end, he realized that she hadn't used any powers to cheat, but when the needle stopped, the wheel of fortune's light lit up again. A cold sweat broke out on the officer's forehead. He didn't believe that a legendary student could cheat in front of him. However, surely it was impossible for her to hit the jackpot 3 times in a row. It was virtually impossible. The wheels program didn't allow for such a high probability of hitting the jackpot. 72 hours. That should be enough, right? Wang Lu returned to Zhou Wen and company. Enough. Enough, Li Xuan and company subconsciously nodded in response. The officer and soldiers looked at her as though she was a monster as the 4 entered the cave together. Wang Lu, how did you do it? I'm willing to pay to buy your method. When they arrived at an uninhabited spot, Li Xuan hurriedly asked Wang Lu. He believed that Wang Lu had definitely cheated, but they just couldn't tell. Wang Lu smiled and said, there's no method. I just pressed the button a few times and hit the jackpot. TCH, forget it if you don't want to say. Li Xuan naturally refused to believe it. Seeing that he didn't believe her, Wang Lu added, I don't have anything that stands out, but my luck is a little better than the average person's. I heard from my dad that before I learned how to walk, he took me out for a stroll. I climbed out of the pram myself and picked up a piece of paper on the grass. Who knew that it was actually a lottery ticket? It even won the first prize that day. It was only 7 or 8 million. I can't remember. When I was in kindergarten, I bought a second-hand hair clip for $3, but to my surprise, there was a high-valued crystal embedded in it. When I was in middle school. Are you kidding me? Li Xuan refused to believe that such a lucky person existed in this world. After all, he had never won the lottery before, much less picked a winning ticket from the ground. What Wang Lu said was basically spinning tails. Do you have any coins on you? Wang Lu said with a smile. Yes, you want to do a coin flip? Li Xuan said as he took out a coin. I'll buy 10 heads. Flip it, said Wang Lu. TCH, I really don't believe it. Li Xuan threw his coin into the air, but when it landed, it was really heads. After 10 consecutive flips, Li Xuan looked at Wang Lu as though he had seen a ghost. Sister Lu, can I call you sister? You are the humanoid version of the lucky baby tiger. Are you free tomorrow? The two of us can make a trip to the rich. When Li Xuan jolted to his senses, he nearly pounced forward to hug Wang Le's thigh. I'm not free. Wang Lu mercilessly rejected Li Xuan. Alright, stop fooling around. I'll discuss the detailed plan first. In a while, you must listen to my instructions and not make any mistakes. Although that tiger isn't a very strong epic creature, it's still at the epic stage. Any tiny mistake could kill us. Zhou repeatedly exhorted them not to be careless. The tiger was just relatively weak compared to an epic stage powerhouse. When compared to legendaries like them, it was undoubtedly a super big boss to them. Don't worry. We aren't fools. We know that it's very dangerous. But old Zhou, you haven't killed a tiger before. Where did this strategy come from? Li Xuan asked. I watched videos on the internet, Zhou Wen said. Damn, can you be any more reliable? Those videos are experts at the epic stage fighting. We are far inferior to them, Li Xuan said. If you don't make a mistake, it will be very reliable. Zhou Wen was very certain that his plan wasn't problematic. He had already tried it countless times, but he was lacking in strength, so he couldn't put his plan into action. He explained the detailed plan to the three of them, especially their positioning and cooperation. Zhou Wen had them practice it several times, and only after seeing that they were familiar with the positioning did he confirm that there was no problem. He then led them deep into the cave. Zhou Wen, can you change this plan? Let Wang Lu deliver the final blow to the tiger. Li Xuan asked Zhou Wen. Sure, Zhou Wen agreed readily. Based on Wang Le's nearly sick luck, killing the tiger would definitely result in something dropping. Tigers were so rare. If it didn't drop anything, they would have to wait a few more days before they could try their luck again. However, to their surprise, Wang Lu shook her head and said, I don't like killing. It's best you do it yourselves. After passing through a few caves, they suddenly saw a tiger covered in white fur and black stripes lying on a boulder in front of them. The tiger also noticed Zhou Wen and company. With a roar, it pounced down from the rock and attacked them. Xuan left, Fang right, Lu back. In order to reduce the troubles while giving commands, Zhou Wen only said one word in their names. Article 189 of 1597. Chapter 189 You owe me. Is this really an epic creature? 20 minutes later, Li Xuan looked in disbelief at the tiger lying in a pool of blood. He found it unbelievable that it was an epic creature. In just 20 minutes, they killed the tiger without any injuries. It was so simple that it was unbelievable. Is there another tiger beside it? Zhou Wen asked. I know it's weak, but I never expected it to be so weak. It was like one of the weakest epic creatures, Li Xuan said. However, Feng Qian said in a serious tone, no, it's not that the tiger is weak, it's that Coach's plan is so targeted. The tiger didn't have the ability to utilize its potential and was suppressed by us. If it wasn't for Coach's plan, it would be questionable if we could have killed it. Old Feng, you really don't have any sense of humor. Li Xuan curled his lips and said, forget it. Old Feng, go take a look and see if there's anything good in the tiger's body. It's best if it can release speed crystals, lest we accompany Zhou Wen again next time. Feng Qian didn't say a word. He walked straight to the tiger's corpse and dissected it. Soon, he dug out a crystalline white companion egg. Fuck, lucky baby tiger. Li Xuan widened his eyes. Their luck was just too good. They had killed a tiger and ended up having a companion egg drop. It was unknown how those bigwigs who had killed countless tigers without having a companion egg drop would feel. How do we split the companion egg? Asked Wang Lu. I've said it before. All I want are speed crystals. Whatever else dropped will be yours. Zhou Wen was the first to excuse himself. He had already said it before coming, so he naturally wouldn't go back on his word just because of a companion egg. Although the tiger was precious and it was difficult for others to obtain it, Zhou Wen could kill it in-game. It wouldn't be difficult to obtain it in the future. I came just to help Zhou Wen. I also said that I wouldn't take anything, Li Xuan said. I don't want it. Feng Qian was even more straightforward. I really want it, but it's too valuable. It's not appropriate for me to take it myself. Let's do it this way. I'll accept the companion egg. Your share will be converted into money or something, said Wang Lu. Are we people who lack money? Rather than money, why don't you help us enter a few more times in the future? Firstly, we can help Zhou Wen get the speed crystals he wants. Secondly, we can also try to see if we can get a few more tigers to drop. When the time comes, we can each bring one out to enjoy the breeze, Li Xuan said. No problem. I'll be there as you wish. Wang Lu also knew that it was indeed difficult to calculate something like a lucky tiger using money. To take it away, she had to owe them favors. There would only be a second tiger in 3 days. The four of them had no choice but to head back now and come back 3 days later. Zhou Wen felt a little depressed. He had read from a thread that the tiger easily dropped speed crystals. Maybe Wang Le's luck was so good that it affected the tiger's drop rate, resulting in a companion egg being dropped. It's still 3 days before we can kill the tiger. It's too long. I'd better do more research and see if there are any other epic creatures that can be killed. Just as Zhou Wen was about to begin gaming, he suddenly heard a knock on the door. When he opened the door, he saw that it was actually Jing. Is there a reason you are looking for me? Zhou Wen asked curiously. Can we talk inside? Jing appeared rather calm this time. Her expression did not change at all. Sure. Zhou Wen let Jing in and poured her a cup of tea. Jing didn't touch the teacup as she looked at Zhou Wen and asked, why did you refuse to participate in the competition for special physiques? Isn't that what you wanted? Zhou Wen asked casually. Jing looked at Zhou Wen and continued, is that why you refused to participate in the competition? It's part of the reason. Since this is your spot, I'm not interested or have any desires in having it, Zhou Wen said. You should know that there's no way to change the nomination. I can't go even if you don't, said Jing. I know, but your things are yours. I can't take your things away just because you don't need them, Zhou Wen said. I understand. Jing nodded slightly as she pondered for a moment before looking up at Zhou Wen. Do you still remember that you agreed to owe me a condition when I brought you into the military camp? Of course I do. You can raise conditions at any time, but it has to be within my abilities. I won't do anything that harms others. Zhou Wen naturally wouldn't forget the favor he owed. It's fine as long as you recognize the debt. Then prepare yourselves. Ah Sheng will take you to the Holy Land tomorrow, said Jing. What do you mean? Zhou Wen was taken aback. My condition is for you to represent me in the competition for special physiques. Is that clear enough? Do you understand? She said indifferently. Why do you want me to go? Haven't you always wanted to prevent me from getting that spot? Zhou Wen frowned as he looked at Jing, unsure of her thoughts. Previously, Jing had tried her best to stop him. She had even transferred to Guide High School to fight him, but now she was the one forcing him to go. On Uncle Feng's account, it's not appropriate for me to personally teach you a lesson. However, there are many geniuses in the Holy Land. It would be appropriate to get them to teach you a lesson and help me vent my anger. It will also let my mother and grandfather know that the person they have high hopes for is useless. Only I can help the Yin family obtain a special physique. With that said, Jing turned to leave Zhou Wen's dorm. When she reached his door, she stopped and said without turning her head, remember, Ah Sheng will pick you up at 10 tomorrow. You owe me this. Zhou Wen was momentarily at a loss for words as he watched Jing leave in a daze. Should I go or not? Zhou Wen was somewhat hesitant. He didn't want to have anything to do with the Yin siblings, so he would rather have Jing's nomination be voided than go. However, for some reason Jing had used the condition in exchange, forcing him to go to the Holy Land. Zhou Wen didn't know why Jing would do that, so he was somewhat hesitant. After some thought, Zhou Wen took out his ordinary phone and called Ouyang Lan. Little Wen, what's the matter? Ouyang Lan remained as cordial as ever. Even though Zhou Wen had rejected her the last time, her attitude towards Zhou Wen didn't change. Sis Lan, can't we switch it to having Jing head to the Holy Land? Zhou Wen asked. It really can't be done. If it were any other family, it might still be possible. However, the League has always been wary of the Yin family. They can't wait to wipe away the Yin family's nomination, so how could they give the Yin family another chance? Ouyang Lan paused for a moment before continuing, you don't need to feel burdened. If you don't want to go, so be it. Speaking of which, I was a little selfish. As it's too dangerous there, I wasn't willing to let my daughter take the risk. Instead, I pushed you to the forefront. It was my bad. Article 190 of 1597. Sislan, can you give me the information about the Holy Land? Zhou Wen thought for a moment. Since he didn't wish to owe the Yin family any favors, he was prepared to make a trip to the Holy Land regardless of Jing's motives as payment. You really don't have to force yourself. It's fine if you don't go, Ouyang Lan said. I wish to take a look, Zhou Wen said. All right then. I'll send you the information on the Holy Land. Ouyang Lan paused before continuing, look through the information first. If you aren't confident, don't go. If anything happens to you, I won't be able to answer Lingfeng. All right, Sislan, send me the information first, Zhou Wen said vaguely. Ouyang Lan sent the information of the Holy Land to Zhou Wen. Only after seeing it did he realize that the Holy Land was actually a large dimensional zone. Unlike ordinary dimensional zones, there were extremely powerful creatures in it. These creatures were actually willing to give humans special bloodlines to change their physiques. However, powerful creatures would not casually bestow human bloodlines. They had to pass their tests to obtain their bloodlines. Currently, the known bloodlines were those of the 6 heroes. Previously, John's Holy Emperor body was one of them. However, the bloodline John had inherited naturally couldn't be compared to the first generation's Holy Emperor body. Zhou Wen had seen the Holy Emperor body before. The other 5 types of physiques were all unique. The most detailed description was a body known as the Sun God body. It was an extremely masculine type that needed one to cultivate an extreme yang elemental primordial energy art to pass the test. Without a doubt, the Sun Strafe art was prepared for the Sun God body, but unfortunately, Zhou Wen didn't cultivate the Sun Strafe art. It was hard to tell if he could obtain the Sun God body when the time came. Sis Lan, I've already thought about it. I want to go to the Holy Land. Zhou Wen felt that there was no harm in making a trip there. He could return the favor he owed in Jing and also attempt to download the Holy Land into his phone. If possible, he might be able to use the Lost Immortal Sutra to obtain many special physiques in the Holy Land. I thought about it carefully and felt that it was best if you don't go, Ouyang Lan suddenly said. Why? Zhou Wen asked in puzzlement. Ouyang Lan said with a wry smile, back when Tianzuo was young, he went once. However, no one received any special physiques during the trip. Why? Zhou Wen was even more puzzled. Ahem. When he went there was some unhappiness between him and the other youths who went. It devolved into an armed melee. That's why the other contestants from other families were rather unfriendly to our Yin family. If you represent the Yin family, they will target you. It will be very troublesome when the time comes, so it's best you don't go, Ouyang Lan said. Those that can enter the Holy Land are at most at the legendary stage, right? Zhou Wen asked after some thought. Yes, the Holy Land has restrictions. One cannot enter if they surpass the legendary stage, Ouyang Lan said. I'll go, Zhou Wen said through gritted teeth. Perhaps it was as in Jing had said. There would be many elites waiting to teach him a lesson, but since he had agreed to return the favor, there was no reason for him to shrink back now. Ouyang Lan added some things to take note of and got Zhou Wen to be careful. Having a chance to obtain a special physique was the best, but it didn't matter if he didn't get it. Safety was the priority. Why are the mother's and daughter's temperament so different? If it wasn't for the fact that In Jing had a unique appearance like Ouyang Lan, Zhou Wen really would suspect that In Jing wasn't Ouyang Lan's biological daughter. Although Zhou Wen had decided on heading to the Holy Land, he had to raise his speed to 21 points first. He could head there after refining the mutated fairy primordial energy skill crystal. It's definitely too late to kill the tiger now. Ignoring the fact that there aren't any tigers in Bainyang Cave, even if there are, killing it might not necessarily result in a speed crystal. After some thought, Zhou Wen realized that there was only one path he could take. He had to buy a 21 valued speed crystal from a crystal shop. Epic grade crystals weren't cheap. Fortunately, a 21 valued speed crystal was considered one of the lowest grade crystals at the epic stage, so the price wasn't too ridiculous. However, even so, the price wasn't something an ordinary person could accept. If it wasn't for the urgency of the matter, Zhou Wen wouldn't have chosen to spend money to buy it. After all, he lacked money. Zhou Wen requested Ah Sheng's help to settle the administrative procedures for his suspension at school. Since he was going to the Holy Land tomorrow, he definitely wouldn't be able to return in half a month. A day or two didn't matter. He got Ah Sheng to drive him to the Ziyuan crystal shop. This time, there were many customers there, unlike the last time when it was only Zhou Wen and Ouyang Lan. When he passed by the code lockers, Zhou Wen took another look and couldn't help but recall the numbers on the name card. Unfortunately, Zhou Wen didn't know what those numbers meant and wasn't sure if it was the passcode for a locker. Young Master Wen, what kind of stat crystal do you want to buy? Ah Sheng asked when he saw Zhou Wen walk to the crystal cabinet. I want to buy an epic speed crystal. Just 21 points would do, Zhou Wen said. Young Master Wen, you haven't advanced to the epic stage yet. It's too dangerous to absorb an epic stage crystal right now. If you need higher valued legendary crystals, I can prepare them for you, Ah Sheng said. There's no need. Zhou Wen shook his head in rejection. The crystals Ah Sheng had brought were naturally given to him by the Yin family. Ah Sheng, what brings you here today? Zhou Wen was looking at the crystal when he suddenly heard an elder's voice. He turned his head and saw that the person speaking was an old man with a sickly look. Old Master Qin, I'm here to accompany young Master Wen to buy crystals, Ah Wen replied respectfully. Only then did Zhou Wen realize that the sickly old man in front of him was likely the owner of Ziyuan Crystal Shop, Qin Ziyuan. Qin Ziyuan appeared somewhat surprised as he looked at Zhou Wen and said, Lad, you're Zhou Wen. Old Master Qin, you know me. Zhou Wen was somewhat surprised. Qin Ziyuan said with a smile, of course I know. There's probably no one in Luong City who doesn't know about Little Lan's marriage with your father. With that said, Qin Ziyuan pulled Zhou Wen's hand and walked him deeper into the store. As he walked, he said, the things outside are just to fool ordinary people. You are one of Little Lan's. Come to my treasury and take a look. Old Master, I just want to buy an epic speed crystal. Just an ordinary one would do, Zhou Wen said. It doesn't matter if you are buying. Take a look first, Qin Ziyuan said with a chuckle as he pulled Zhou Wen into the elevator. Qin Ziyuan led him straight to the 4th floor. After exiting the elevator, he said to Ah Sheng, stay here and watch. Don't let anyone disturb us. Article 191 of 1597.